Hey guys, tonight we drift gently back through time to the salty breeze of the eastern Mediterranean, where the streets of Tyre glow with warm lantern light and everything, seriously, everything, smells faintly of fish and purple dye. You stand on uneven stone, barefoot, the soles of your feet still damp from a long day unloading cedarwood. Around you, traders haggle in half a dozen tongues, their robes flapping like sails as they argue over grain, glass, and garlic. The air buzzes with the clinks of amphorae, the creak of dock ropes, and the suspiciously loud laugh of someone who just sold a suspiciously light crate of olives. This isn't just a port, it's the beating heart of the Phoenician world. Tyre, the queen of maritime commerce. You probably won't survive this century without dysentery, a pirate attack, or a poorly stacked jar of lentils crushing your leg. But you're here now, and you've got a front row view of something quietly revolutionary, the moment trade stops being guesswork and starts becoming organized. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time is it there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge past coiled ropes and sun-baked sailors, their backs arched from hauling freight all day. In your arms, a clay tablet scrawled with today's cargo, 30 amphorae of olive oil, 15 bundles of dyed wool, and one very confused goat. You've got no clipboard, no Excel sheet, just this clay slab that cracks if you drop it and smudges if you breathe too hard. The Phoenicians aren't exactly new to trade. Even a few centuries earlier, their Canaanite ancestors were trading with Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Cyprus. But now, around 1200 BC, it's full on maritime hustle. Their secret weapon, boats that don't suck. Long, narrow hulls with high prows slice through waves like it's their job, which it is. But there's a catch. When your economy depends on hauling stuff across vast, stormy water, things tend to get disorganized. There's no barcode scanner, no label printer. Half the time, nobody remembers which cargo belongs to which client. More than once, an amphora full of prized date syrup ends up in Byblos instead of Carthage, and someone somewhere is still mad about it. So what do you do when your job is managing literal tons of perishable goods and your only filing system is that pile over there? You start improvising. One trader begins scratching simple glyphs into crates. Not fancy writing, just a crude mark showing who gets what. Another ties a piece of dyed thread around a jug's handle to distinguish it from the others. It's not elegant. It's barely even consistent. But it's the start of something, a collective realization that trade needs labels. Historians still argue whether the Phoenicians really invented shipping labels or just made them a lot more practical. There's some debate about whether the Minoans were already doing something similar with their linear inscriptions. But here's the difference. The Phoenicians systematized it. They didn't just tag crates, they built a civilization around the need to track goods efficiently. Walking past the workshops, you see open baskets of murex shells, the infamous sea snails whose glands ooze the rare purple dye that made Tyre so rich. The smell, not great, but the money. Oh, it's flowing. This stuff is worth more than gold, and you better believe people are trying to counterfeit it. So what do clever merchants do? They tag the real thing. Sometimes with seals pressed into wax. Sometimes with branded marks on the amphora. You're starting to get the picture. Early labeling isn't just about where the cargo goes, it's also about what it really is. Oh, and fun fact, the Tyrian purple dye wasn't just hard to make. It stank badly, like dead snail in the sunbad. But hey, if you're trying to signal wealth and power, why not drench yourself in eau to decomposing mollusk? You pass an elderly scribe hunched over a wooden tablet, copying out trade tallies with a stylus. He grumbles as he writes, flicking flies away from the ink. Even this, dry as it looks, is revolutionary. Instead of remembering everything or losing track entirely, people are writing stuff down. And once you start writing things down for trade, it snowballs. The script gets simpler. The letters more flexible. Sound by sound, the Phoenician alphabet is born. There's a sleepy little fire crackling near the docks now. A few sailors lounge nearby, their conversation low and rhythmic, half in jest, half in exhaustion. You sit beside them, close your eyes for a second, and imagine a world just beginning to grasp the value of tracking its goods. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, just symbols scratched into clay, threads tied in color, names etched on crates, the tiniest administrative shifts, paving the way for a future where you can actually expect your Amazon order to show up on time. Because without these sleepy little systems, without someone saying, "Hey, let's not lose the cinnamon again," commerce would still be one big chaotic guessing game. And so you exhale, listening to the creak of a nearby hull and the distant splash of oars, letting the warm wind and boring brilliance of ancient logistics lull you deeper into the story. The sun slips lazily over the horizon as you shuffle down the dock. Watching the final loading of a merchant galley, a crewman hoists a heavy amphora and mutters something under his breath. Probably the ancient Phoenician equivalent of, "Who packed this like a maniac?" The ship is bound for Sidon, maybe even all the way to Egypt, loaded with jars of wine, bundles of cedar wood, sacks of barley, and an impressive number of goats who look deeply unimpressed by everything. There's no barcode, no bill of lading, and absolutely no backup system if someone drops a crate. Every item is recorded on a clay tablet, if it's recorded at all. And honestly, good luck reading that once the ship hits a wave and someone smears it with olive oil. You stand behind the harbor master, who squints at a crumbling slab of fired clay, trying to decipher the shipment list. His thumb smudges a name. Was that supposed to be 20 amphorae for Bashal or Bashan? Oops. There go 2 jars of sesame oil to the wrong guy. Shipping, as it turns out, is already a nightmare. Even 3,000 years ago. The Phoenicians are legendary sailors, yes. But legendary planners? Not quite yet. And that's the problem. You've got some of the most advanced ships in the ancient world, but the paperwork is literally breaking in your hands. Clay is great for some things. Durability, for instance, but not ideal for quick updates or wet conditions. The second it rains, everyone starts pretending they remember what went where. Spoiler alert, they do not. Historians still argue whether merchants in this period genuinely trusted these systems or mostly just nodded along while improvising. Some claim trade functioned on a blend of scribbled notes and blind faith, with verbal agreements playing a major role. Others argue a shadowy class of clerks, often overlooked, were the real MVPs of ancient shipping. Meanwhile, the crew improvises. One sailor scratches a fish symbol on a jar headed for a fishing village. Another uses a piece of wax to seal a scroll inside a crate. Yes, it melts in the heat, but it usually gets there. The system is chaotic, but patterns start to emerge. At the edge of the port, you spot a young boy carrying an amphora labeled with an actual name, Hannibal. It's crudely etched, but it's clear. No scribes involved, just a basic identifier, probably carved by the shipper himself. And just like that, the first flicker of a label that works. It's personal. Traceable. Less likely to be swapped or accidentally. Lost during unloading? You hop aboard a galley about to leave port. Its deck crowded with goods and sailors yelling over one another. The captain, an older man with a voice like gravel and a beard full of secrets, grumbles about the state of things. Used to be, you knew every jar by sight. He mutters, "Now we've got 30 jars that look the same and half of them are full of goat milk. Or worse." You glance around. He's not wrong. The amphorae are virtually identical. No stickers. No serial numbers. Just vibes. As you settle on a crate, the captain pulls a thin, wooden slat from under his tunic. It's got a series of scratches on it. Horizontal, vertical, and one that looks suspiciously like a stick figure drowning. This, he says, tells me which crates belong to the merchant in Arwad. You blink. Is that a shipping manifest? Sort of. It's proto-data. Not quite writing, not quite drawing. Just enough to keep track. He explains that the scratches correspond to specific crates, each with a matching mark somewhere hidden. He doesn't trust clay. Too fragile. So he's invented a floating filing cabinet, and he guards it like treasure. And suddenly, things start to make sense. Labeling as a concept isn't about looking smart. It's about survival. It's about making sure the wine doesn't go to the guy who ordered flax. That the expensive Egyptian perfume doesn't end up in a tavern in Cyprus. That your shipment actually arrives at the right dock and doesn't vanish into some sailor's retirement stash. It's boring, sure. It's shipping labels, but it's also the foundation of something much bigger. Every scratched slat, every wax seal, every scribbled name. It's the beginning of accountability, of traceability, of we know where it came from and who it's for. One crewman jokes that next they'll be tying notes to pigeons. Another swears he once saw a jar with a painted label, all fancy and colored. You're not sure you believe him, but wouldn't that be something? A gust of wind flutters your tunic as the ship eases away from the dock, the sails catching just right. You watch Tyre recede into the distance, its clustered buildings glowing orange in the sunset, and you think about how much easier this journey would be if someone had just invented sticky notes. Still, these crude labels, etched lines, wooden slats, half-legible scrawls, they're enough. Barely, but enough. And you realize maybe the reason the Phoenicians were so successful wasn't just their ships. It was their stubborn refusal to lose track of the cheese. Your ship sways gently on the open water, the waves slapping against its wooden hull like a lazy metronome. It's late now. The sun has dipped below the horizon, and stars begin to pepper the sky above the Mediterranean. You nestle yourself between a stack of wool bundles and a suspiciously warm amphora of fish sauce, trying not to think about it too hard. The crew settles into low murmurs, and the captain lights a small oil lamp near the stern, casting long, flickering shadows across the deck. This is where it happens, where the need for structure outweighs the old, just wing it method. Because by now, Phoenician trade isn't just robust, it's relentless. Ships are everywhere, ports are bustling. Cargo is multiplying faster than anyone can mentally track, and so the captain's old slat and scratch trick starts to spread. Only now, it's evolving. You watch as another sailor approaches a bundle of dyed fabric and pulls a knife from his belt. Not to steal, but to mark. He carves a symbol into the wooden crate, a circle with 2 lines. For Gubball, he explains. That way, the lads know not to dump this in Sidon again. Apparently, that mistake cost someone their left thumb. You do not ask follow-up questions. This simple act, scratching a mark directly into the cargo, becomes shockingly effective. No scroll to lose, no clay to crack. The crate is the record. Historians later call this practice direct symbol tagging, but the crew calls it keeping the new guy from screwing up. Same idea. Soon enough, these marks multiply. One for origin, one for destination, one to identify the merchant. Some sailors even invent symbols for fragile, which mostly involve angry faces or upside-down goats. It's all deeply unofficial, yet incredibly functional. The captain, always gruff but now a little proud, shows you his latest innovation, a brand new system of markings burned into the crate wood with a heated iron. You squint, it's rudimentary, more scar than symbol, but he swears it works. Fewer questions, he mutters, and nobody tries to steal what they know they'll be caught carrying. And that's the key. Labeling starts to evolve from mere guidance to security. A mark isn't just informative, it's a warning, a deterrent, a way to claim ownership in a sea of identical jars and boxes. Historians still argue whether these early, floating filing cabinets were formalized by Phoenician guilds or emerged through trial and error by overworked dock crews. There's scant physical evidence, just a handful of marked crates found in shipwrecks, and a few charred symbols preserved in trade archives. But the consensus is growing something clicked. Somewhere in this boring but deeply practical system, order emerged from the chaos. And then, of course, came the unintended side effect labeling led to blame. With clear marks came clear responsibility. Suddenly, if someone forgot to load the amber beads, it wasn't an unfortunate mix-up. It was Tamosh the Third, rower carved the wrong mark again. Accountability, in all its passive-aggressive glory, was born. You glance over the side of the ship, watching the phosphorescent trail your vessel leaves in the moonlight. It's calm, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. You imagine a warehouse back entire, if you could call a bunch of jumbled tarps and half-rotted scaffolding a warehouse, where a harried clerk tries to make sense of a week's deliveries using nothing but char marks and a sun-faded log. One crate is marked with a bird, another with a swirl. One seems to be labeled with what might be a fish or a screaming face. Hard to tell. The point is, these labels are starting to mean things. Not just to the marker, but to others. They're evolving into a common code. That's when it hits you. These aren't just marks. They're proto-logos. Brand identities before brands. Some traders start using consistent symbols, maybe a tree for cedar exports, or a fish hook for seafood hauls. Clients begin to recognize them, trust them, complain when they're missing. Sound familiar? You shift in your seat, accidentally leaning on the fish sauce amphora again. It belches a truly unholy aroma. That's one label you wouldn't mind making smell proof. But back to the captain. He's now carving notches into a wooden tag he ties to a net of jugs. Each notch is a count, he explains. Too many, and someone's either stealing or bad at math. He gives you a look like he's dealt with both. You nod sagely, pretending you didn't just confuse wine for vinegar earlier. Fun fact, one fringe theory suggests that some of these symbols were later stylized into letters, like actual alphabet letters. The Aleph Sa'ok's head symbol might have started as a simple cargo mark on a goods tag. Historians are still debating it. Of course, nothing's ever that tidy, but if true, it means your boring little shipping label might have birthed the first Take that? Calligraphy. Night deepens. The ship slows. You hear the creak of wood, the sigh of the wind, the low gurgle of amphorae sloshing in their crates. And you realize something oddly profound. These men and women, in their sandals and sea-worn tunics, are building the foundations of global trade. One scratched plank at a time. No medals, no monuments. Just symbols in the dark, guiding goods from hand to hand across the sea. Dawn creeps over the horizon like a cautious cat, stretching golden light across the gently bobbing fleet, now anchored off the coast of Byblos. The ship groans softly as the crew stirs. You wake with your cheek pressed to a wool bundle, and a vague sense that your dreams involved angry amphorae and labeling disputes. Byblos is already humming. Long before the sun fully clears the waves, dockhands are at it, holing, yelling, misplacing, and occasionally dropping expensive looking jars with the kind of casual clumsiness that makes insurance adjusters in the future very, very grateful to exist. But today, your focus narrows to a very specific object, the humble amphora. It's everywhere. Stacked like ancient Legos in pyramids by the dock, leaning against carts, tottering on the shoulders of men with backs like tree trunks. These jars are the backbone of Mediterranean trade, used to ship wine, oil, grains, and, unfortunately, fermented fish paste. The amphora's shape, narrow neck, pointed bottom, is no accident. That pointy end lets it nest neatly in sand or cradle snugly in a ship's rack. Efficient. Space-saving. Ship stable. But here's the thing. When every jar looks the same, how do you tell them apart? Cue the next great leap in the grand. Boring history of labeling, standardized containers. You trail behind a supervisor shouting orders in Phoenician and waving what looks like a stick, but is actually a highly symbolic indicator of his importance. He points to stacks of amphorae bearing identical stamps, a sunburst symbol on the neck, and sometimes a line of script along the shoulder. Tyrian batch, he barks. Don't mix with Sidonian. You nod as if you knew that already. This, you realize, is the crux of the shift. Once containers become uniform, labeling them stops being a desperate afterthought and starts becoming logical, practical, predictable. Stamped amphorae! Who would have thought that a little pressed emblem in wet clay could spark an administrative revolution? These stamps, often created with carved seals, show origin, merchant, or content type. One with a cluster of grapes might mean wine. Another with a star, probably olive oil. Or maybe it's just someone showing off their carving skills. Nobody's totally sure. Historians still argue whether these amphora stamps were government mandated or just a best practice adopted by smart merchants. Some evidence suggests cities like Tyre and Sidon had guilds that set standards. Others believe it was just whoever had the time and talent to not carve everything like a potato. One fringe but delightful theory, that certain shapes of amphorae and their stamp styles corresponded to not just content, but the social rank of the buyer. Imagine aristocratic olives in a fancy jug, plebeian olives in a jug with a wonky smiley face. It's niche, unproven, and wonderfully absurd, but possible. You watch as workers paint marks onto the amphorae, using thick brushes dipped in a paste of clay and iron oxide. The symbols are crude but effective, a diagonal slash for fragile, a double loop for do not tilt. Something you learn the hard way when one of those double loop jars leaks all over your sandals. It's olive oil, mostly, you hope. Later that day, while sheltering under a tarp from the brutal mid-morning sun, you sit with a merchant who shows you a personal innovation, a shipping ledger etched into a thin wooden tablet. On one side, he's copied the stamped symbols of his cargo, on the other, their destinations. He matches it to each amphora like a memory game. I lose this, he says, tapping the board. I lose a month's worth of wine. The stakes are real. And because the amphorae themselves are now consistent in size and shape, even loading becomes label-driven. Crates marked for Greece are stowed closer to the rear. Carthage, bound jars are tied with twine at the neck. It's not just labeling, it's early logistics. One sailor, overhearing your interest, leans in and shares a secret. Some captains add a personal symbol to the base of each jar. An arrow, a fish, a sun. So if one is ever found washed ashore, folks know who lost it. It's like an early version of lost luggage tags, except they usually never get it back. You nod politely while trying not to picture hundreds of amphorae drifting like ancient sea ghosts across the water, each one with a sad little return to sender stamp. That night, after the chaos of port settles into a lull, you find yourself a stack of freshly stamped jars, still warm from the kiln. You run your fingers over the imprint, a starburst surrounded by a wavy border. It's deeply unimpressive, and yet profoundly important, because these amphorae, with their uniform shapes and standardized marks, are the world's first shipping containers with embedded metadata. No, really. They're doing the ancient version of what modern barcodes do, holding origin, contents, and accountability in one neat, durable package. You lean back, the stars bright overhead, the sea breeze now a soft whisper. Another shipment sails tomorrow, bound for Rhodes. Most of the jars will arrive. Some might not. But thanks to the quiet genius of standardization and labeling, someone, somewhere, will at least know what's missing. It's early morning in Babylon, and you're stepping off a Phoenician cargo boat with a crick in your neck and fish, sauce residue still clinging to your cloak. You're far from home now, deep inland, where the rivers flow thick with trade and the local scribes are way too into cuneiform. The docks here aren't quite like Tyre's. They're fussier. More square. You get the sense that if a crate is 1 inch out of place, someone will write a tablet, long complain about it. And sure enough, the moment your crew starts unloading, a Babylonian official rushes over. He's holding a reed stylus like a weapon and waving a wax-covered tablet. This crate, he announces, jabbing at an amphora, was stored sideways last time. The oil leaked. Again. His voice is wary, like a man who's explained gravity one too many times. That's when you realize the latest breakthrough in the slow, burning saga of shipping labels, directional marks. You see it now, etched into the side of the amphora, faint but deliberate, an arrow. Not a battle symbol, not a bird, just an arrow. It's so boring it's beautiful. You help the scribe tilt the amphora upright. These things travel better when people understand top and bottom. He mutters, "You'd think we invented beer for fun." You don't tell him that your own crew once loaded a shipment of honey upside down and arrived in Egypt with a boat full of ants. These marks, arrows, waves, slashes, are the ancient precursors to this: side up, handle with care, and keep dry. And as more Phoenician merchants sail farther east, they pick up on these Babylonian habits, not because it's fashionable, because they're sick of mopping up wine from the bilge. Historians still argue whether this labeling influence was a direct Babylonian import or a coincidental evolution. Some say the arrow symbol emerged independently in several trade hubs. Others insist it's clearly Mesopotamian. Either way, Phoenicians see the logic and start carving arrows on everything, and not just arrows. Suddenly, there are wavelines for liquids, crosshatch marks for fragile items, and even early attempts at quantity tallies, 3 horizontal strokes to 3 jugs. It's not complex yet, but it's enough to make a tired deckhand shout, "Wait, this one's different." Here's where it gets interesting. You find yourself helping a merchant pack a shipment bound for Anatolia. He hands you a wax board with hand-drawn symbols. Each crate gets a mark based on its position in the ship's hold. "Easier to find later," he says. "Easier to blame someone when it's gone." Once again, labeling shifts from helpful hint to forensic evidence. If something's missing, the symbol tells you what, where, and maybe even who. The sea is still chaotic, sure, but this is order. Tiny, obsessive, glorious order. As you haul another crate, you notice something new, a tablet chained to a box. Not written in Phoenician, but in Akkadian cuneiform, describing the crate's contents, origin, and destination. It's thick, heavy, and deeply inconvenient, so you know it must be official. Turns out, Babylonian customs agents have begun requiring written documentation for high-value imports. The Phoenicians begrudgingly comply. They even start hiring bilingual scribes just to deal with the paperwork. One fringe theory claims this is the earliest case of outsourced admin work, and honestly, it tracks. You sit with one of these scribes as he carefully impresses symbols into clay. "Fish sauce from Tyre," he mutters, destined for Eridu, accompanied by 2 jars of wine and 1 very angry goose. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. It's a gift. Now the symbols aren't just for sorting, they're for storytelling. They provide a micro history of the shipment, a tiny documentary etched into mud. You imagine someone 1,000 years later digging this up and thinking, why is there a goose involved? Meanwhile, back at the docks, you see a shift in protocol. Amphorae now have 2 marks, 1 for orientation, 1 for content. Some even carry a third, a scratched in-ship emblem. The crew has started using these to sort goods faster during unloading, tossing them into zones based on symbol clusters. It's clunky but effective, like ancient Excel. And as the Phoenicians sail home, they take these innovations with them. Arrows start showing up in biblos, wavy lines in Sidon. Even Carthage, way out west, begins stamping clay seals onto cargo with stylized directionals. The Mediterranean is slowly becoming a labeled sea, not with grand proclamations or heraldic banners, but with tiny, boring, brilliant scratches in clay and wood. That night, you lie on the ship's deck, head resting against a bundle of stamped wool, eyes tracing the constellations above. Somewhere below in the hold, a crate with an arrow is sitting just right, upright, dry, ready. It's not thrilling. It's not heroic. But it's working. And sometimes that's enough. The stench hits you before you even reach the workshop. A sour, salty, almost metallic funk that clings to your nostrils like a bad decision. You gag a little, which the local dye workers seem to find hilarious. First time. One asks, grinning through purple, stained teeth. You nod, trying not to breathe too deeply. You're here to learn about Phoenician dyes, but more importantly, how shipping labels became vital in stopping an ancient version of every modern annoyance, counterfeit goods. Welcome to the world of murex snails. These little sea creatures are the unsung victims of fashion. Their glands, yes, glands, secrete a substance that, after a very complicated, very smelly process, turns into a deep, vibrant purple. Tyrian purple. The color of kings, priests, and people who enjoy making their neighbors jealous. It's expensive. Ridiculously so. It takes thousands of snails to produce a single gram of dye. And because it's so valuable, guess what happens? That's right, scams, fakes, rip-offs. Merchants dye cloth with cheaper stuff. Madder root, lichen, beet juice, and pass it off as the real deal. From a distance, it looks close enough. But under the hot Mediterranean sun, lies fade fast. This is where labeling jumps from useful to essential. Merchants need a way to prove authenticity. Enter the ante, counterfeit shipping tag. You crouch beside a grizzled trader who's tying a small tablet to a bolt of dyed linen. It's made of waxed wood, carved with the merchant's mark, and a series of scratches indicating dye batch, snail origin, and, in one case, the date it was soaked. Buyers trust it, he explains. If it's missing, they walk away. It's boring. It's brilliant. And it works. Historians still argue whether this kind of tagging was widespread or just limited to high-end goods like purple cloth. Some believe only elite merchants used these identifiers, while others think every trader with a carving knife tried to slap a brand on their goods. You help him attach another tag. It's circular, like a coin, with a hole for string. The marks are simple: a triangle, a swirl, and a stick figure. It looks like a caveman's shopping list, but it tells a story. Triangle, the tire dye district. Swirl, batch to be. Stick figure, this guy's unique signature. Probably. But that's not the only safeguard. The dyed fabric itself is marked, with tiny sewn-in threads, dyed separately using the same snails. Think of it as an early watermark. If someone cuts it out, the fabric's value plummets. You lean close and spot the stitch purple on purple, barely visible. Subtler. Sleep-inducing, sure, but clever. One sailor tells you about a recent scam in Cyprus, where an entire shipment of Tyrian dyed robes turned out to be fake. The giveaway? No tag. No stitch. Just the smell, which lacked that telltale dead snail bouquet. To stop this from happening again, several Phoenician guilds start enforcing labeling standards. In Tyre, Carthage, even Ugarit, traders agree to maintain symbols, stamps, or tags for dyed goods. One fringe theory suggests these guild marks eventually evolve into early trademarks. Brand identities long before Nike swooshes and luxury logos. You follow a crate through its journey, from the dye shop to the harbor, onto a ship, and eventually into a market in Cyprus. At each step, the tag is checked, noted, sometimes tied if it's come loose. In the market, a buyer holds it up to the light, squinting. Triangle, swirl, man. Good batch, she says, before nodding to complete the trade. It's bureaucratic, it's petty, and it's utterly necessary. You pause near a pile of unused tags. Some are wax, some wood, one or two even ceramic, sturdier but heavier. A young apprentice is carving a new batch. You have to change the mark every season, he explains. Or people just fake last year's. You ask what happens if someone does fake it. He points to a basket. Inside is a robe dyed the wrong shade of purple, slightly off, a little too blue. That, he says, was supposed to be imperial grade. He picks up a branding iron. Literally, a tiny piece of iron with a reverse symbol on the end, and sears a mark into the edge of the cloth, a large X. Unsellable. Tagged as fake. The ancient world's version of VOID. That night, you rest near the harbor again, watching a moonlit boat roll in with a fresh shipment of dye, stained cloth. Dock workers check each tag under oil, lamplight, their hands moving fast but careful. They aren't poets. They're not philosophers. But with every tug cord and examined mark, they're doing something profoundly modern. They're verifying supply chains, validating origin, fighting fraud with fragments of burned wood and snail guts. It's not glamorous. It's not grand. It's just people trying to make sure no one gets swindled over a toga. You're crammed inside a workshop in Byblos now, surrounded by scribes hunched over their tools like caffeinated squirrels. Thin slats of wood, flakes of bark, and discarded styluses litter the floor. The place smells like wax, cedar, and frustrated muttering it's here, amidst the grumbling and scratching, that the Phoenician alphabet is slowly, painfully, gloriously being born, and part of the reason. Shipping logs. You shift closer to a bearded man, holding a wooden tablet and muttering to himself. Aleph bet, Gemel, he recites, scratching lines that look more like tac, toe than literacy. Why do sheep need a letter? You ask. He stares at you for a long time, then says, because everyone keeps stealing the wool. See, the Phoenician alphabet wasn't cooked up by poets. It wasn't invented for epic ballads or love letters. No, it came from the grind of commerce, tracking shipments, logging trades, identifying goods that otherwise looked identical in every single amphora. This guy, for instance, is developing a system to jot down merchant names, shipment contents, and destinations, all using a leaner set of symbols that doesn't require a PhD in hieroglyphics. The beauty of the Phoenician script is that it doesn't try to look fancy. It's brutally efficient. Each symbol links to a sound, not an idea or object. That means fewer symbols, faster writing, and less confusion when you're halfway through a manifest and a goat sneezes on your clay tablet. Historians still argue whether the alphabet's emergence was primarily driven by trade, religion, or administration. Some say it was temple scribes simplifying prayers. Others insist it came from merchants desperate to record what went where without hiring a full-time Babylonian. You can probably guess which theory we're leaning into. A younger apprentice hands you a sample, a scrap of wood, bearing several characters. Wine for Dido, it reads, more or less. Dido's a merchant in Tyre, and apparently very picky about her imported vintages. Without this note, someone might have mistaken her amphorae for the fish sauce batch. Tragedy. You're told that writing used to be the domain of elites. Royal scribes, temple priests. But now, it's inching toward the docks. Slowly, the alphabet's sneaking into the hands of traders, sailors, and warehouse grunts. These aren't poems, they're packing slips, receipts, schedules. Glorious bureaucratic boredom in written form. One fringe detail that makes historians giggle. There's a theory that the mem symbol, the one for the M sound, originated as a wavy line for water. Not poetry, not mystery. Just a guy trying to label barrels of drinking water. You sit beside a merchant as he trains his son to read the new script. He points to each character and pairs it with a sound, then a word. Bet for bait. House. Dalet for delet, door. You realize what's happening. He's teaching his kid to read using household items and trade terms. Practical. Immediate. No gods or kings, just stuff. And this is where the shipping label transforms into something more powerful. When people can write with sound, base characters, they don't need to memorize every silly little symbol. They can just spell it out. For a merchant dealing with dozens of ports and languages, this is life-changing. Soon, crates don't just have symbols, they have names. Aber's Lenin, Hanno's wine, to be delivered in Sidon. It's still carved or inked, still rough, but it's legible, scannable. Well, with your eyes, anyway. You help one scribe transcribe a cargo manifest. It takes hours, and your handwriting looks like it was done by a particularly drunk goat. But it works. You record not just quantities, but descriptions, dates, and in one hilarious case, a warning: do not open near fire. Contents flammable. So you later discover it's turpentine. In the corner, another trader tests a rudimentary code system. Every merchant has a 2-character identifier. Every product has its own shorthand. We'll never have to write full names again, he declares. You glance at the 30 tablets he's already lost in the wind. Great. You lie. Still, there's something wonderful about it. A writing system designed not for priests, but for people with dirty hands and tight schedules. The Phoenician alphabet spreads not because it's elegant, but because it's useful. You can carve it into wood, scribble it on bark, burn it into crates, even brand it into amphorae if you've got the nerve. You pass a row of packed jars marked not just with cargo symbols, but alphabetic initials, actual written names. For the first time in history, a shipping label can talk, not just hint or suggest, but clearly state this belongs to Baruch, bound for Byblos, due next full moon. Night falls. You find a spot on the stone floor of the workshop, using a stack of unfinished tablets as a pillow. Around you, the soft sounds of scratching, muttering, and yawns blend into a lullaby of literacy. And as you drift off, you realize the next great invention isn't a faster ship or stronger rope. It's a shorter alphabet. You wake to the snap and hiss of fire and find yourself staring at a branding iron, glowing orange in the morning dark. It's not some terrifying punishment device. It's just the latest tool in the great, underwhelming arms race of shipping control. A dockhand nearby chuckles as he presses the hot iron against a wooden crate, leaving behind a scorched symbol shaped like a crescent moon. That one's for Hazer, he says casually, as if he didn't just burn moon graffiti into someone's future breakfast delivery. Welcome to the era of branding, literally. You get up, brushing wood shavings from your tunic, and look around the dock. Everywhere, steam rises from burnt wood and singed rope. Crates, barrels, even bundles of cloth are being marked with hot irons. Some merchants use their own personalized symbols: a fish, a sunburst, a spiral, while others adopt regional brands: a dolphin for Sidon, a stylized cedar tree for Tyre. It's practical, fast, smelly. This shift to burning instead of carving starts as a time-saving hack. It's faster to press than to chisel, and much harder to tamper with. You can't just sand it off. That mark is permanent, or at least as permanent as wood allows in the ancient world of termites and salt spray. One ship captain, shirtless and covered in soot, shows off his collection: 5 branding irons, each with a different mark for a specific type of cargo. One for food, one for textiles, one for precious goods, one for dangerous, which you note is shaped like a crab. Why a crab, you ask? Because it bites, he says, grinning, before tossing the iron back into the coals. Historians still argue whether branding spread from livestock practices or was independently adopted for cargo. We know that branding animals was already common in Egypt and Mesopotamia, identifying ownership, preventing theft. So it's not a leap to imagine a Phoenician trader, tired of missing shipments and misdelivered wine, staring at a goat's flank and going, "Wait a minute." You pass a row of goats. Yes, literal goats, each marked with a similar burn. Apparently, livestock often traveled alongside goods, and smart traders began treating them like parcels. They received marks. They were logged. One poor creature even has a wax tag hanging from its horn, swaying sadly in the wind. Soon, branding becomes more than just identification. It becomes insurance. A mark means the goods have been counted, checked, and blessed. Well, maybe not spiritually, but definitely bureaucratically. If something goes missing, and the mark is found elsewhere, someone's in trouble. One merchant explains how branded cargo deters theft. "No one wants to get caught with another man's moon crate," he says. "Too easy to trace." In other words, labeling has shifted into the realm of deterrence. It's no longer just a way to find things. It's a way to prevent people from taking them. You help a branding crew for an afternoon, and it's hot, tedious work. You sweat through your robe, scorch your hand once, and nearly brand your own sandal. The process is mind, numbingly repetitive. Heat, press, sizzle, cool. But with each hiss and puff of smoke, a little more order is imposed on the swirling chaos of ancient commerce. Some traders get even more creative. They brand their crates twice, once on top, once on the side. So if the top is covered during loading, the mark is still visible. One particularly obsessive merchant brands the inside of the lid. Two, just in case of tampering. A fringe theory suggests branding even found its way into legal disputes. One recovered tablet from Ugarit mentions a crate with dual marks, as agreed upon by both parties. Sounds like a very boring prenup for trade. By evening, the dock is covered in charred symbols, the air thick with the scent of burnt wood and lightly cooked leather. You're exhausted, but strangely impressed. You never thought watching people burn crescent moons into boxes would give you hope for civilization. But here we are. You collapse near a stack of marked crates destined for Crete. Each one bears a different symbol, yet all of them speak the same quiet language. This belongs to someone. This was accounted for. This isn't just a box. It's a node in a fragile, ancient network held together by lines, slashes, brands, and symbols. You let your head rest against a warm crate, eyes fluttering shut to the slow hum of the dock's dying fire. Somewhere out there, another trader is inventing another boring trick to keep their amphorae safe, and changing history just a little in the process. You're jolted awake by a clattering crash and the unmistakable sound of two sailors shouting ancient obscenities. You sit up groggily just in time to see a barrel rolling into the harbor, followed by three frantic dockhands trying to fish it out before it becomes fish food. Welcome to the not-so-serene world of the dock boys, those unsung, underpaid, occasionally barefoot heroes of Phoenician trade. By mid-morning, the docks are a symphony of chaos. Ships crowd in like overbooked dinner guests. Crates are flying, figuratively. Goats are screaming, literally. And every merchant insists that his cargo be unloaded first. The labeling systems, they help. But when humans are involved, they're still shouting, shoving, and at least one crate of onions smashing open because someone stacked it under a jar of wine. Again. So, what do the Phoenicians do when labeling alone can't handle the mess? They invent another layer of order, job titles, and color-coded systems. You watch a supervisor distribute bundles of colored netting. Red for Carthage, bound goods, blue for Alexandria, green for Sidon. These nets are tied around crates, amphorae, and even the horns of tagged goats. The color tells dockhands at a glance where each item goes. It's rudimentary. It's genius. And it turns out to be surprisingly enforceable. One dockhand, skin like leather, voice like sandpaper, tells you the system started as a joke. We used to paint the crates just to mess with the new guys. Then someone realized it actually helped. Classic Phoenicians innovation born from mockery. Historians still argue whether this dockside sorting method was standardized across the empire or just evolved in high volume ports like Tyre and Sidon. Some think it was implemented by guilds. Others believe it came from one especially obsessive foreman named Hamilcart. Either way, it stuck. You follow a crate from ship to stall and see the system in action. A red, netted amphora is pulled off first and tossed into the Carthage pile. Blue ones get stacked separately. A painted plank above the docks matches net colors to symbols. For the illiterate, a dolphin for Sidon, a star for Tyre, a palm tree for Egypt. Even if you can't read, you know where your crate goes. This creates a new class of workers color readers, net, checkers, label, watchers. The Phoenician version of floor managers. Suddenly, there's accountability, not just for what's being moved, but who is moving it. You meet one such net, checker, a wary woman with quick hands and an even quicker glare. That crate's in the wrong pile. She snaps at a young porter, Sidon, not Cyprus. You want to explain to a Sidonian widow Why she got perfume instead of grain. The boy blushes. You nod approvingly. She terrifies you. Soon, these job titles come with tools, color sticks, tally cords, wax tablets. You help a scribe record the number of red nets offloaded today. 46. Maybe. His handwriting's rough, and he keeps getting distracted by a dog chewing on a sandal. One fringe theory suggests this proto-logistics network even had primitive shift scheduling. Clay tablets found in biblos appear to list names and symbols alongside specific days, where they dock crew rotations, pay logs, fantasy sports leagues. No one's sure, but the presence of names, marks, and dates hints at a level of administrative micromanagement only rivaled by your local HOA. By dusk, you're helping sort a shipment of luxury goods, perfumes, scrolls, and ivory. These are labeled with not just colors, but ribbons. Ribbons! The merchant insists they deter tampering. No thief wants to risk untying the wrong one and getting caught with silk in his teeth. Bold claim. The color-coded system isn't perfect. Mistakes still happen. Fights still break out. But for the first time, the dock isn't a complete free for all. There's a rhythm, a choreography, a slow dance of nets, ropes, crates, and scoldings. One dockhand jokes that the only real improvement would be a label that yells at you when you mess up. You laugh. Then imagine it. Ancient smart crates, coming soon to a market near you. Just 900 years early. As night falls, the crowd thins. The shouting softens. A few boys tie up the nets for reuse tomorrow, while others sit around a fire, comparing bruises and arguing over which port has the worst food. A consensus? Anywhere that serves boiled goat. You sit on a stack of blue, netted crates, watching the last ship ease out into the moonlight. You think back to how labeling began, just scratched marks and gut guesses, and now here you are in a world of docks with systems, roles, and color-coded chaos. It's messy. It's noisy. It smells like wet rope and pickled fish. But it's working. And tomorrow, it will all happen again. The Nile is slick with early morning mist as your boat glides into the port of Memphis. You're greeted by the sound of hollow clanking, wood on stone, as Egyptian dock crews maneuver freight with practiced grace. But there's tension in the air, the kind you can smell before you can name. And there, standing under a massive painted awning, is the reason Egyptian officials, scrolls in hand, peering down their very straight noses at your Phoenician shipment. You've officially entered a world where jealousy meets bureaucracy. Egypt is watching the Phoenicians closely. Too closely. Their merchants have started noticing the labels, the marks, the mysterious organization that lets a ship from Tyre deliver 30 crates, 9 goats, and 2 amphorae of rosewater to the correct place every single time. Meanwhile, Egyptian traders are still playing an ancient version of, "Where's my stuff?" You overhear one scribe whisper to another. Their crates talk to each other. You stifle a laugh. The Phoenicians don't have magic. They have branding, tags, nets, and a head start on shipping labels. And now, Egypt wants in. You're summoned to a warehouse near the dock, where Egyptian clerks are inspecting Phoenician cargo, like they're deciphering alien tech. One leans over a crate and squints at a scorched sunburst brand. "What does this mean?" he asks. You tell him, "Cedarwood, from Sidon." Grade B. He writes it down like it's the secret to immortality. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians adopted Phoenician labeling systems wholesale or tried to reinvent them from scratch. Some evidence, like the painted shipping signs in later Nile markets, suggests mimicry, but inscriptions in temple records hint at resentment. The pharaoh's scribes wanted to improve the system, not just copy it, and so begins the Great Label Race. Egyptian overseers begin experimenting with their own marking methods. Some try painting hieroglyphic codes onto crates, tiny depictions of birds, baskets, and rivers. Others borrow the color, coding idea, but assign meanings like sacred, urgent, or royal property. It's less about where the shipment goes and more about who's allowed to touch it. This adds a whole new dimension, access control. A blue stripe might mean, handle only with priestly hands. A red mark might mean, for the palace, do not drop, even if it's on fire. The docks begin to resemble an art installation of symbols and warnings. One Egyptian clerk proudly shows you his innovation, a double seal system. First, a clay seal bearing the scribe's mark. Second, a wax seal that breaks if the lid is lifted. Tamper, proof, he declares. You don't have the heart to mention that Phoenicians have been doing something similar with pitch and string for years. Still, the Egyptians are fast learners. Within weeks, their ports are humming with new signs, sealed tablets, and dock scribes with ink, stained robes. They create inspection posts, where each crate is logged, labeled, and sorted with ritualistic intensity. One port even installs a raised platform where a senior scribe can bless important cargo with a symbolic palm leaf. Is it helpful? Debatable, but it's dramatic. You sit on the sidelines watching as Phoenician and Egyptian crews bicker over who invented what. One Phoenician sailor jokes that next, the Egyptians will try to label the Nile. Caution River may contain crocodiles, not far off. One particularly ambitious official gives you a tour of his logistics chamber. A room full of marked crates, scroll racks, and clay tablets cataloged by date, content, and destination. He's proud, but you notice something odd. Many of the markings mirror Phoenician ones. The swirl, the arrow, even the double slash that means urgent. You ask where he learned them. He shrugs. Trade secrets travel. By twilight, a new system emerges. Hybrid labels. Crates bound for shared markets, say in Gaza or Ugarit, carry both Egyptian hieroglyphic codes and Phoenician branding. Two systems, one crate. It's clunky, but it works. And it's an early version of what modern shipping would one day become international standards. One fringe theory claims this shared labeling led to the first shipping treaties, where cities agreed on standard marks to reduce confusion and bribery. There's no hard proof, but scratched graffiti in a Nile port shows matching marks with approved symbols beneath. Coincidence? Maybe, but fun to imagine. You wrap up your visit, just as the last of the day's ships departs, the Nile glowing gold in the low sun. You sit by a stack of cedar crates, watching a scribe dip his brush into ink, paint a careful bird symbol onto the wood, and whisper a quiet curse as it smears. It's not perfect, it's not fast, but it's Egypt trying to catch up with Phoenicia. And somewhere in the middle, amid paint and wax and stubborn pride, something remarkable is happening. Two ancient civilizations are creating a language of trade, not spoken, not sung, but scratched, scorched, and sealed into the very wood and clay of their world. The ship's deck is slick with morning condensation as you balance a crate between your knees and try not to breathe too deeply. Inside the crate, fermented fish sauce, garum, as the Romans will one day call it. Right now, it's just pungent nightmare in a jar, and here's the kicker. It's leaking. You flag down a deckhand, who groans the moment he smells it. Should have double packed the stoppers, he mutters. This batch is doomed. The crate gets moved to the farthest corner of the deck, next to the equally cursed amphorae of pickled garlic and mystery paste. Welcome to the high-stakes world of fragile and foul cargo, where the importance of labeling reaches a new, nose-wrinkling peak. With more and more Phoenician ships hauling delicate, smelly, and often perishable goods, the old marks, ownership, origin, destination, aren't enough anymore. Traders now need a way to signal careful. This will explode, or melt, or destroy morale. You notice the solution right away: a new mark. A diagonal wave, line carved alongside the usual brand. You ask a nearby merchant. That means don't shake, he says. We learned the hard way. You don't ask for details. Historians still argue whether these early handling instructions were official codifications or just desperate improvisations by seasoned sailors. Evidence leans toward the latter, at least at first. Crates marked with slash lines, amphorae painted with what appear to be broken pot symbols, Even nets dyed with a dull gray to signal, open with caution. No one held a conference. This was just ancient survival strategy. You help unload a shipment of blown glass, delicate, high value, and as fragile as a truce between rival ports. Each vessel is wrapped in straw, double netted, and tied with red cords. The crate bears 3 marks: the merchant's stamp, a wavy caution symbol, and a stylized eye. You ask what the eye means. Break it, and I see you, the dockhand says. You laugh nervously. He does not. Here's where it gets beautifully boring. Phoenician crews start organizing their ships by risk zones. Heavy goods, stone, wine, timber. Go low. Fragiles ride high and far from movement areas. Each zone is marked, and each crate's label includes zone codes. One captain shows you a wax tablet with the whole system mapped out in doodles. It's half doodle, half revelation. One fringe theory suggests some of these codes became pictographs, reused in later cargo systems. A double up arrow might have morphed into later keep upright symbols. A swirly line above a jug, maybe the ancestor of liquid. No hard proof, but the continuity is tantalizing. You travel with a shipment of perfume from Sidon to a small port on Crete. Every amphora is sealed with wax and labeled with the Phoenician letter resh, a merchant's mark, but also tagged with a soft cloth dyed blue. Perfume cloth, a sailor explains, means handle like a baby. Or better, honestly. During loading, the foreman gives a mini lecture, pointing to each tag and snapping commands. Blue cloth, no stacking. Fish symbol, ventilate. Triple dots, keep out of sun. The crew rolls their eyes, but obeys. You realize something remarkable is happening. These aren't random warnings, they're forming a protocol. A visual vocabulary of cargo care. Some labels go a step further. One merchant uses scent. Yes, scent. His crates are dabbed with distinct smells, so illiterate porters can tell them apart. You think he's joking, until a sailor sniffs a crate and says, "Jasmine batch, don't drop it again." It's weird, it's effective, and it's oddly advanced. Dockside, a crisis erupts when a crate of brine cheese breaks open in the sun. Instant stink storm. You rush to help repackage it, and notice the crate had a unique symbol, a wedge crossed by 3 lines. You ask about it later. "Oh, that means don't store near fish sauce," someone says. Ah, yes. The ancient wisdom of stink avoidance. As night falls, you watch as crates are sorted onshore by handling label. Delicate, volatile, smelly but safe. A few even have double tags, one carved, one painted. You help tie on new tags to a batch of vinegar amphorae. Black cord for no stack, green dot for store cool. It's shipping's version of a mood ring. Li trong lu nyi tin nen and beine kintne chatgpt ynni. The port supervisor walks by, nodding approvingly. "Used to lose 10 jugs a trip," he says. "No, we only lose 2. You try to sound impressed, and he grins. "Progress? Eh." Historians like to focus on big events. Wars, kings, revolutions. But here you are, witnessing the quiet rise of something arguably just as transformative, handling protocols. Not dictated by rulers, but carved, painted, and whispered into existence by the people who actually have to carry the stuff. A crewman tosses you a red, tipped cord and nods toward a stack of parchment rolls. "Fire risk," he says. You tie it off, suddenly aware of how much you've learned from these ancient symbols. Red means fire. Blue means breakable. Gray means gross. These aren't just labels anymore, they're instructions. Warnings. Small essays carved into the silence between ports. Later, you lie on the deck as the ship creaks softly beneath you. Crates shift gently in their netted zones. Blue cloth fluttering. Symbols glinting in the low lantern light. No one's yelling. Nothing's broken. The fish sauce hasn't leaked again. It's almost peaceful. And you realize, with the kind of sleepy clarity only seawater and bureaucracy can bring, the reason ancient trade works isn't luck. It's labels. Boring, brilliant, life-saving labels. The sun is high over the bustling harbor of a sleepy border town called Dor, where the Phoenician coast kisses. Canaanite trade routes, and everyone's business is, quite literally, someone else's. You step onto the dock with your satchel of stamped manifests and your new favorite phrase, inspection required. Yes, friend, you've entered the thrilling world of the ancient customs office. Right away, you spot the difference. This isn't Tyre's polished efficiency or Egypt's over-orchestrated chaos. Door is small, scrappy, and suspicious. A local clerk, shirtless and sunburnt, squints at your cargo. You say cedar. He mutters, poking a crate, but what if it's not cedar? You blink. It's cedar. He shrugs. Gotta check anyway. Enter the inspection stamp. The clerk pulls out a flat wooden paddle, etched with a stylized fish symbol. He smears it with black resin, presses it to the crate's corner, and leaves a perfect mark. Approved, he says with exaggerated pride. You ask what happens if he doesn't approve something. Still gets the mark? He admits, but with a line through it. And just like that, you discover a whole new layer of labeling validation. Historians still argue whether these inspection stamps began as a form of municipal oversight or as a shakedown strategy to justify local taxes. Both are likely true. What matters is that they took hold. Over time, no crate passed through certain ports without that smeared, printed sign of approval, or at least, probably fine. You watch as crates are pulled aside and marked based on random guesses, whispered bribes, and, occasionally, actual inspection. Some clerks tap the wood. Others sniff the contents. One shakes a wine amphora and listens like it's a baby. Too quiet, he says. Maybe watered down. He slaps on a yellow sticker of shame, a paintbrush symbol turned upside down. These stamps vary wildly from town to town. One port uses a fish for approval, another uses a palm tree. One border town near Gaza simply marks, okay, in early Phoenician letters. Yes, literally, okay. Some things really do never change. You meet a clerk named Elier who's proud of his honest stamp. He even keeps a wax tablet, listing the exact symbols and what they mean. Arrow, pass. Cracked bowl, recheck. Eyed under surveillance. It's adorable. And slightly ominous. But here's the thing. Some traders don't want a real inspection. They want a fast one. So, a black market service emerges fake stamps. You overhear two sailors discussing it in hushed tones. Saw one last week. One says, used a squid instead of the official octopus. No one noticed. Fringe theory time. Some historians believe this kind of mark mimicry led to early anti-fraud design. Instead of plain stamps, certain cities start embossing tiny, unique dots into the symbols. You find one clerk in Byblos who insists his star-shaped stamp has 15 rays. Exactly. Apparently, one stamp fraudster once used 16. The horror. You follow a crate from ship to market through 3 checkpoints. First, a dockside inspection. Symbol fish. Then, a weigh-in station. Symbol leaf. Finally, a tax desk. Symbol stylized hand. At each stop, another stamp. Another potential delay. Another opportunity for a clever trader to offer someone a small purse of coins and skip step 3 entirely. And there it is, corruption. It's not just allowed. It's basically expected. You witness a scene so routine it might as well be choreographed. Merchant approaches. Clerk raises eyebrow. Merchant jingles pouch. Clerk stamps crate without looking. Done. The system becomes so entrenched that traders begin labeling their goods with suggested inspection symbols. One crate even has 3 stamped fish on it before it's unloaded. The clerk sighs, stamps it a 4th time, and waves it through. Later that day, you chat with a merchant who's had enough. He's developed a solution, a sealed manifest scroll tied directly to the crate, bearing a personal emblem and the names of all previously visited ports. If they see I've already passed through Tyre and Dor, he says, they're less likely to waste my time. It's a passport. For cargo, you're amazed. This practice spreads. Scrolls, slates, and tablet tags begin to travel with the shipment, documenting its inspection history. One fringe suggestion claims these were the distant ancestors of today's shipping manifests, complete with timestamps. inspector names, and route notations. As dusk falls, the customs dock slows. Crates marked and unmarked line the pier like a weird museum of shipping anxiety. You sit among them, tracing the ink, dried stamp on a wine jug. An eye with a diagonal slash. Passed, but just barely. You realize that with each added stamp, each thumbprint and smear, ancient goods weren't just traveling, they were collecting stories. Marks of trust, bribes, fears, hopes. A bureaucratic diary in symbols and wax. It's the least exciting part of trade. And yet, it's the part that proves something moved. That someone saw it, stamped it, and let it pass. Your ship limps into a quiet cove along the Sardinian coast after riding out the kind of storm that turns wine into vinegar and amphorae into fish habitats. The sails are shredded, your hands are blistered, and the hold smells like regret. As the crew assesses the damage, someone mutters, "We've lost half the shipment." You're not surprised. A night like that was designed to rearrange cargo, break spirits, and make you question the concept of boats altogether. You crawl into the hold and begin sorting through the survivors. Most of the crates are damp, dented, or upside down. One amphora is miraculously intact, still tagged with its original seal. A wax stamp and a bit of dyed thread. The label is soggy but legible. You lift it carefully and say aloud, "Barley, for Himilco, Utica." Then something incredible happens. From the other end of the ship, another sailor calls out, holding up a crate half buried in seaweed and disappointment. It too bears the same wax seal. Same color thread. "Himilco," he says. Looks like it floated back to us. In this mess of scattered goods, broken inventory, and lost patience, it's the labels that guide the recovery. Suddenly, you and the crew are no longer guessing what goes where. You're sorting by symbols. Crates marked with matching glyphs are reunited. Amphorae with known stamps are set aside for redistribution. A few items, sadly, remain anonymous. Bare wood, no tags. Orphans of the sea. Historians still argue how widespread this use of labeling for recovery truly was. The evidence is patchy. Some cargo remains from shipwrecks show clear marks. Others are mysteriously blank. Some believe the better. Labeled ships were owned by elite merchants who could afford better systems. Others argue that by 800 BCE, even humble captains were savvy enough to brand every crate, just in case Poseidon got curious. One fringe theory claims that early shipping labels even helped salvage operations. Phoenician divers. Yes, underwater specialists existed, were trained to recognize markings and recover high-priority goods first. If a crate bore a royal or temple seal, top of the list. If it smelled like pickled turnips, maybe later. You join a salvage operation the next day. A small boat is dispatched to scan the nearby shoreline for washed-up cargo. They carry a log, literally a wooden plank, painted with a cheat sheet of symbols. The crew compares every find against it. One barrel, waterlogged but intact, bears a brand shaped like an ox. "That's the wool merchant from Tyre," someone says. "Tag it. He'll want it back." And sure enough, a week later, you dock in Tyre and hand off the recovered goods. The merchant inspects each crate, nods at the familiar brands, and actually smiles. A rare and beautiful sight in trade. Didn't think I'd see that batch again. He mutters, scratching a note onto his wax board. That's when it hits you. Labels don't just help ship things. They help find things. In the absence of insurance, GPS, or radio beacons, a scratched mark on wood becomes the beacon. That swooshy triangle, that looping star, they're not just decoration. They're boomerangs, homing pigeons, ancient air tags. You wander through the warehouse district of Tyre later that night and spot a new innovation: recovery logs. Merchants are now keeping track of symbols, not just for shipping, but for retrieval. One scroll lists every branded mark used in the past year, including symbols for backup identification, just in case the main tag gets lost. It's bureaucracy, sure. But it's also resilience. A young merchant proudly shows off his double marking system, a carved brand, and a rope pattern. "In case the wood burns," he explains, Rope doesn't lie. You don't question his logic. You just admire the paranoia. You hear stories, possibly exaggerated, of crates washing ashore years after storms, still bearing recognizable symbols. In one case, a merchant from Carthage allegedly identified his long-lost crate by a crooked A he carved while tipsy. It had drifted as far as Sicily, he cried. Probably. Back aboard your now repaired ship, you're helping tie updated tags to a new batch of amphorae. Each one gets a name, a destination, a cargo type, and, new edition, a return mark. I found, deliver to Adonabal, Warehouse 3, a label with hope. You lie down among the crates that night, the stars blinking overhead, the gentle rocking of the harbor returning you to something resembling calm. Around you, dozens of crates, bundles, and barrels all bear their quiet, stubborn symbols. They're not pretty. They're not poetic. But they remember what people forget, and when wind and waves scatter everything, it's those marks that guide the pieces back together. The port of Ostia smells like garlic, sweat, and ambition. You've just arrived in the Roman Republic's busiest shipping hub, and already the difference is glaring. It's loud, it's fast, and everyone's yelling in Latin. A dock clerk waves you in while chewing a fig and simultaneously scribbling on a wax tablet. Phoenician shipment. He barks, you nod. Labels on the crates. You nod again. He grunts approvingly. About time. Welcome to Rome's obsession with organization. By the time the Romans start inheriting and absorbing Phoenician shipping know how, they don't just adopt it. They weaponize it. The quiet labeling systems born on cedar crates and dyed cloth bolts are now chiseled into marble, inked into scrolls, and filed with the kind of meticulousness that makes your eyelids heavy. You follow a cargo train toward a warehouse that's less warehouse and more filing cabinet with a roof. Every crate is marked. Every bundle stamped. But instead of charming hand, carved squiggles or color, coded nets, everything here has numbers. Row numbers, bin numbers, shipment IDs. One Roman trader shows you a scroll that lists an entire shipment of olive oil. 72 amphorae, each numbered and labeled with origin, producer, and handling instructions. It's precise, it's systematic, it's surprisingly Phoenician. Historians still argue how much of Rome's logistics system was directly influenced by Phoenician practices. Some say Rome simply scaled up what Tyre started. Others claim the similarities are coincidence, or the result of shared Mediterranean trends. Either way, the overlap is obvious, and frankly, impressive. You walk into a granary, where a manager is checking crate brands against a stone inventory slab. It's divided by type fermentum, grain, oleum, oil, vinum, wine, and so on. Each entry has a symbol, a location mark, and a Roman numeral. You blink, it's a literal spreadsheet, carved in rock. Even personal property is labeled. A passing courier points to a wax-sealed scroll tied to his crate. Household goods, he explains. From Senator Spurius to his villa in Pompeii. Includes rugs, glassware, and one parrot. Do not tip. You help sort a shipment of ceramic tiles, each marked not with a brand, but with a code. 3 letters, TB for Tiber, for example, followed by a number and a shape stamp. The clerk explains origin, inspector ID, and product type. You ask what the shape means. Triangle is roof tile, circle is floor, square is decorative. We don't mess around. You can tell. The Romans don't just use labels, they audit them. If a shipment arrives with mismatched codes, it's quarantined. If a mark is unreadable, the whole card is pulled aside for review. Their motto might as well be label, or it didn't happen. One fringe but delightful tidbit, some Roman warehouses reportedly employed label specialists, people whose only job was to match marks to scroll entries. One scroll from Pompeii even lists Licinius, marker of goods. It's not glamorous, but it's definitely important. Later at a villa outside the city, you meet a merchant who proudly displays his shipping ledger, a thick papyrus book filled with symbols, weights, destinations, and a surprisingly detailed section on label tampering. He's had a few bad experiences. You think it's wine? He says. But it's vinegar. That's how they get you. He shows you a new trick. Embedded lead tags. Small discs, etched with merchant symbols and often secured inside the crate. Under the top layer. If someone swaps the goods, the tag's still there and doesn't match. It's the ancient version of shrink, wrap tamper evidence, and it's deliciously petty. You stroll past the customs office and see an actual library of past shipments, shelves stacked with scrolls, each categorized by city, merchant, and product. You watch as a clerk cross references a Phoenician brand with a Roman manifest. Here, she says, pointing, that mark belongs to Hanno of Tyre. Olive oil. 3 shipments. Good record. Rome, you realize, has transformed labels into history. A crate is no longer just cargo. It's a timestamp, a reputation. Even the docks reflect this logic. Crates are loaded not by weight, but by label clusters. All Carthage, bound crates with triangle marks go in one section. Alexandria, bound goods with double lines go in another. There are painted guides on the deck floors. A sailor jokes, even our ropes have instructions now. One night, you help unpack a shipment from Cyprus. One of the crates has no visible label. Panic. The crew pulls out a spare scroll, a pre-written manifest with backup marks. One sailor examines the jar. It has a faint fish brand near the base, he says. Probably rubbed off during the storm. A sigh of relief. It's logged, accepted, and sent onward. And there it is, a shared language, born in Phoenicia, mastered by Rome. The marks may differ, but the idea remains. The label is the voice of the cargo. It doesn't cry, doesn't shout. It just quietly states, I came from there. I belong to them. Handle me right. You're back in Tyre now, older, saltier, and somehow even more fascinated by wooden crates than you were before. The docks have changed. Or maybe it's just your eyes. What once looked like chaos now moves like a slow, humming machine. Crates shift in labeled clusters. Rope bundles carry dye, coded knots. Amphorae roll down ramps according to stamped route codes. There's still yelling, sure. There are still goats. But under it all, there's logistics. Not the flashy kind. Not the we've invented an empire kind. But the boring, quietly brilliant system that lets trade happen across thousands of miles and dozens of languages. A young apprentice rushes by, clutching a split tablet etched with crude Phoenician letters. He's sweating. He drops it. You pick it up, brush it off, and hand it back. Where's it going? You ask, Biblos, he says. Cedar batch. You nod. No other words needed. Because now, labeling isn't just about marking a crate. It's a complete ecosystem. Shipping tags aren't just symbols anymore. They're multi-part identifiers, wax seals with merchant initials. Rope knots signifying type of cargo. Wooden discs with punch patterns for zone assignment, all designed to be read at a glance by tired, sunburned humans half asleep on night shifts. It's intuitive, durable, redundant. Historians still debate when this full logistical language matured. Some say around 700 BCE. Others argue it was slower, a few tweaks at a time. But no one disputes the outcome. By the Iron Age, Phoenician labeling had become an administrative art form. You step inside a warehouse that might be the most boring place in history, and therefore, the most revolutionary. It's organized, not pretty, not fast, but organized. The clerk checks off incoming cargo using 3 methods: crate brand, manifest tally, and tag thread color. If all 3 match, and it goes. If one doesn't. Quarantine pile. You watch as a crate is sent aside simply for having the wrong shade of rope. It's exhausting. It's brilliant. One fringe theory even claims that these early redundancies, multiple tags, layered info, anticipated the failed safe principles of modern shipping. If one label fails, another speaks. If 2 fail, there's still a third. A backup system for the backup system. Phoenicians, the original overthinkers. And guess what? It all works. A shipment from Sidon arrives. 10 crates. All marked. All intact, they're unloaded in order, checked off in order. and move to a staging area by color-coded wheelbarrows. Yes, really. You help load one final outbound ship, bound for Sicily. The captain hands you a tag board. Each crate on the manifest has a symbol, a destination glyph, and a rotation mark. The rotation mark. It tells dock hands how many hands high to stack it. Logistics meets Tetris. And here, standing on the docks, watching labeled crates flow like alphabet soup into a cargo hold. You feel it. The birth of global trade wasn't a flash. It was a trickle, a scrawl, a knot, a sizzle of brand on wood. And somewhere between scratched amphorae and stamped wax, humanity discovered how to move things intentionally. From symbols scratched in desperation to full systems of management. The Phoenicians didn't just invent shipping labels. They invented clarity. They gave stuff a voice. Not a dramatic one, not a poetic one, but a practical one. I belong to this person. I go to that place. I should not be dropped. The winds shift. Another ship creaks toward the open sea. The sun dips low, and you realize it's all still happening. Every barcode, every QR tag, every fragile sticker or return to sender slip. It traces its lineage back to here. To this dock where someone once said, I think we should label this. And now let your breathing soften, as if each inhale carries the scent of cedar wood and distant rain. The waves have quieted, the sails furled. Crates sit patiently under starlight, their marks facing upward, silent and sure. There's no rush now, no list to tally. The winds have calmed. Your eyelids grow heavier with each creak of the dock, each lazy splash of water beneath the hull. The voices around you fade. Not gone, just resting. Let them. You've traveled far, but only through stillness. From a single scratched line on clay to a network that held empires afloat. You didn't conquer anything. You didn't lead an army. You just paid attention, so now rest. The crates are stacked, the jugs are safe, every tag is in place, and your journey for tonight is complete.